Free for All Friday, guys, and today we are going to be taking a look at some Edison decks posted way back before Shonen Jump Championship Edison. So these are decks people were posting, asking for advice on, or just showing off on duelistgroundz. So some of you may remember duelistgroundz. It was an online forum where people would get together, talk, and do other things. There were wars way back when. It was duelistgroundz versus like Pojo versus like Yu-Gi-Oh, etc. And there's a few other forums. They would do wars, and battles, and all that good stuff way back then. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the history of duelistgroundz. We're here to talk a little about the history of Yu-Gi-Oh. So first things first, I went back, took a look at the threads and saw what people were posting. I chose, I think, 7 or 8 decks here we're going to take a look at. And the very first one is Cat Without Hamster Flamvell. That was the name of the deck. It's important to remember, though, that back in duelistgroundz days, a lot of people named their decks after songs. So that is one thing to keep in mind. A lot of these decks are just going to be named after a song. That's just how it was. You name it after a song, you post the song at the top of it, you post your deck list. Welcome to duelistgroundz. All right, so he named his Cat Without Hamster Flamvell. Obviously, that's a little bit of a lie, as we see Flamvell Magician here. Maybe originally he wasn't playing the Magician, and he ended up adding it to the deck. So this deck was posted way back when by Blaze. All right, we're not going to dox anybody. I do know a few of these people's real name, but I'm not going to say their real name unless that name is their profile username on duelistgroundz. Okay, so no doxing in this video. So he posted this deck way back before SJC Edison, and he called it Cat Without Hamster Flamvell. So looking at it, it's not too far off from what we would play today. He did include the Dark End Dragon in the side deck. I mean, in the extra deck. Did he own Dark End Dragon? I have no idea. Maybe he was just using it on YVD, or did Dueling Network exist in 2010? I honestly don't remember. Yeah, I do not remember if Dueling Network was in 2010 or a few years after that in like 2012. Either way, he included the Dark End Dragon. That is another important thing to remember. A lot of these decks are not going to have Dark End Dragon in them, as most people could not afford them. All right, most people did not have them, and they couldn't use them, right? So, yeah. Think about that moving forward. If you do not see Dark End Dragon in the deck, there is a reason for that. But like I said, this deck is not too far off from what you see today still with the Rescue Cat builds. We have the Spies, the Descendants, Raikos, the Pot of Avarices, My Body is a Shield in the main deck. He is on double Oppression, and you know there's no Doom Caliber, so this was not Caliber Cat, which I believe did the best at the YCS, or SJC, sorry, at the SJC. So for SJC Edison, I believe it was Billy Brake got the highest with the Cat, and he played Caliber Cat. So this was his list. I want you guys to comment below, rate this deck out of 10. What would you give this deck today? Can it still compete? I believe at a local level, this deck could still compete fairly well. The Flamvell Magician's a nice little tech card, you know. It's not going to change too much. So I think, yes, this deck can still compete today, and he already has Dark End Dragon in it, so that's nice. You don't need to go adding that for today's decks. So, interesting list posted by Blaze, and now we're going to take a look at the next deck. The next deck was called Float On. So this was a song by Modest Mouse, I believe. You know, we all float on, okay, all right, already, we all float on, something like that. Anyway, not here to sing. So this is Float On. He named it that for a pretty obvious reason if you understand how this deck works. It's all monsters that float. You know, the green floats into red, red floats into yellow, yellow into green, and then Gear Frame into Fortress, things like that. He was on the double Fortress, okay? So back then, everybody's like, play 3 Fortress, play 3 Fortress. There were at least 3 people in the comments for his thread telling him to put in like 3 Fortress. And he was like, I don't think it's good. You don't need 3. So he kept it at 2. And honestly, I kind of agree with that. 3 Fortress is a bit much. and 2 is usually the correct, quote unquote, correct amount. So this was his deck. Do I think this deck can still compete today, though? So this one's a little more interesting. I think at a local level, this deck would be fine. At a larger event, maybe, you know, one of the YCS side events, the national side event, I do not see this deck making top 8. It kind of has to get lucky matchups throughout the day. I mean, the triple smashing is fine. The double fissures are a little so-so. Overall, this deck is all right. Like I said, locally, it's a good deck, but I don't know if I'd take this to a 100+ person event. Maybe I would if I just wanted to, you know, have a little fun. Is it a great deck? I don't think this is a great deck. Is it a good deck? Sure. It can win. Yes. It can top locals. Is it going to win one of the big online RBTs? No. I don't see that happening with this deck. Okay. So this one, again, was titled Float On. In the comments below, Float On. What do you rate this deck out of 10? And if you think there are any changes, you know, make that change. Say what he should change. All right. The next deck, I Hate College, and, you know, this was back, Asher Roth had his famous I Love College song. So I Hate College was posted by Demonized. It was a Flamvell Cat deck. I chose this one because he decided to not play the Spy Descendant engine and instead opted for Guard. So I'll tell you this right now, this was pretty uncommon to see someone just completely leaving out the Spy engine. And, again, there's no dark end, anything like that. He did not even play Chimera Tech here. I would like to add something I did not mention before. The side deck, I only included side deck cards if I felt like it was something crucial, like it was a big change to the deck. You know, if maybe he's blindsiding or if he's making major changes to his deck with the side deck. So most of these I did not include the side. They're pretty irrelevant and not useful. So again, this was I Hate College, posted by Demonized. So this deck is pretty interesting. It does all the things that Cat normally wants to do, except I think playing the Guard overall is a weakness. The Spy into the Descendant play is just really, really strong, and not being able to recruit into that, you know. And also the Flamvell engine, we've learned that the Flamvell Cat is not usually the best version of Cat. Pure Cat with spies and etc. is usually the better version. So I can see this deck being a little bricky. Could it compete at a local level? Sure, no problem. Will this win an RBT? This is probably not. Let's be honest. But pretty cool deck nonetheless. I mean, a few Flamvell builds did top SJC Edison. I just want to make sure. Okay, I don't know if his build was one of them or not. I'm not gonna go looking that up. So if a build similar to his, not his build. So this was a deck he was preparing for SJC Edison. Maybe he did well. I don't know. I don't know this guy. All right. So the next deck is Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Obviously, that's LSD by the Beatles. And this deck is by a player you all know. We all know him. He's one of the most famous Yu-Gi-Oh players ever. I've known him since I was maybe 10 years old. I've known this man a long, long time. I probably went to a regional where he was using this deck, to be completely honest with you. This deck was posted by Patrick Hoban. So he played Light Sworn with 2 Wolf. I'm assuming he thought Wolf was clunky, and double Wabaku. All right, so looking at it in retrospective, Threatening Roar is better than Wabaku here. Gladiator Beast can't do anything versus Threatening, whereas with Wabaku it can. And overall, it's a pretty interesting list. I mean, it's got a lot of Celestia in here. He does play the Hamster engine. I would say this isn't the greatest Light Sworn list, but it's pretty strong. He's on double Oppression, which you don't see too often these days. Maybe that's why he went with the double Wolf, because he's on double Oppression. I'm not entirely sure. But this was Patrick Hoban's list. He posted it before SJC Edison. And I will say this list was posted before he became Patrick Hoban. Upstart Hoban. So this was like a year or two before he started topping, SJC's, YCS's, whatever they were when he started topping those. And before the whole, what was his era, the first era when he started winning a bunch, it was maybe after Tengu, somewhere around there, I think. It's kind of hard. I'm an old man. Bear with me. So this was Patrick Hoban's Light Sworn list. And again, he called it Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. What do you rate this deck out of 10? Do you think this could still compete? Do you think 2 Wolf, 2 Oppression, 2 JD? Do you think that was good? 2 Book, 2 Pot of Avarice. The Pot of Avarice is a big one here. That's, this is Light Sworn, Pot of Avarice. Okay. We're not going to get too much into that. We don't want to, talk too bad. Like I said, these are hindsight. You're looking at this with fresh knowledge of Edison. This was posted before Edison, before Jeff Jones won with Quick Draw. And now our next deck is Shiny Scrap and Clutter by Noob54 Dinner. All right, so this is a pretty interesting deck. He also, I put it inside instead of extra. He also, for his extra deck, did not even include 15 cards. He literally just wrote down 13 and that was that. Like he didn't even put 15. But this deck is pretty interesting in what it can do. So it is a completely recursive deck. He's using the Dandies, the Raikos, to bring all this back with the debris and the junks. I believe they can special pretty much all of them except for the Mask of Darkness as far as debris goes, right? Yeah, so debris could grab everything except for Mask of Darkness, which junk can grab. And the Mask of Darkness recurs all of these traps, letting him use them over and over again. And he's got the double pot of avarices to use those over and again. So this deck is all about using the same resources over and over and over. I do like this concept. I mean, this seems like a pretty cool deck. I mean, I don't know if it's great. Maybe a limit reverse here or there could help this deck out. I think it's interesting. I think this deck has promise. Could it compete right out of the box like it is right now? Maybe. And for those that don't know what Rinyan is, it's target 1 Light Sworn monster in your graveyard, shuffle that target into your deck, then draw 1 card. So it shuffles Raiko, it shuffles Lila back into the deck, draw a card, gets a little bit of advantage from that. It is a 100 beast level 2, so it can be grabbed by debris or junk. So this deck just spams debris and junk over and over and over again. And yeah, it's an interesting concept. I like this. I might play around with this deck. So again, this was Shiny Scrap and Clutter, posted by Noob54 Dinner. All right, so our next deck was simply just called SJC Edison Zombies. He did not post an extra deck. He just posted his main deck. So you have to guess what he actually has in the extra. This was a pretty pure-ish zombie build, I guess. It's not Diva Zombie. It's not Diva Warrior Zombie, There's no Mallies. There's no Miracle Fusions. He's on Book of Life. He's on Smashing and Nobleman. I don't think this is the strongest zombie build. I mean, obviously we know now the instant fusion, good old Ramen Boy, Spirit Reaper of the Nightmare is probably like the best pure build of zombies you can make. I mean, it's very, very strong. But back in the day, this was kind of what people were leaning towards when they went Diva-less. I believe in the comments he said he did not want to include Diva because he just didn't think it was good and kept bricking into it and did not like it in his testing. So this again was, what was it? SJC Edison Zombies by Bizos. Sorry, I forgot to say the poster's name. It was Bizos. So this was his zombie build. What do you think of his deck? Rate it below out of 10. Could this deck still compete today? And next, we're going to start looking at some more typical decks. So the next one is SJC Jersey by G Nation. All right, and One thing to denote about this deck, the SJC Jersey deck by G Nation. G Nation was a pretty well-known player. All right, not gonna dox him. He was a staff member of Duelist Grounds, though. I will say that. You can see that by looking at his profile on the website. And yeah, so this was his version of Quick Draw. So he was on the Limit Reverse. So this is his Quick Draw, Dandy, Warrior, whatever you want to call it. The extra deck here, he I don't think he included the 15th card, so that's just not one there. Maybe I messed up building the deck. Maybe I don't know, but it's pretty standard-ish looking. This was back when people were still playing LAD, so for SJC Edison, this was pretty standard-ish. I will say though, going back and looking at Duelist Grounds before Edison, a lot of people commented on the Quick Draw decks asking, why the hell are you playing Quick Draw? So people just did not get the deck. So it had already topped a few regionals around America, but overall the deck was not super well known because people like to keep things secret. They didn't want to share deck list. People just think, oh, we're playing plants. Okay, plant, synchro, whatever, The Quick Draw list with the Drill Warrior, using Drill Warrior to get your resources back, was not super famous before Edison. Because I remember playing at a regional, and it was really early on. It was when all these cards had just come out. Somebody was playing the deck, and he absolutely demolished me. I had no idea what he was doing. I was playing Flamvell at the time, and I legitimately just did not get what was happening. He was getting so much stuff back with Drill Warrior, and yeah, he pooped on me. I think he won the regional undefeated as well. It was one of those, the deck was just, not too many people understood it, and a very popular theme in the comments was, why are you playing Quick Draw? What does Quick Draw do? Why Quick Draw? Why? And a few weeks later, everybody learned why, as it won. I keep saying YCS, Shonen Jump Championship Edison. So that's just really funny to me. But the one thing that makes this deck stick out, that a lot of people were like, man, you really just love this card, is he played Trident Dragon, whatever, however you want to pronounce it. So the Trident. So one of the ways to make Trident, because you have to use a Dragon-type tuner and a non-tuner Dragon-type monster. So obviously you're going to need Debris, because it's the only Dragon tuner in the deck. So Debris plus Iron Chain. So that's how you make the Trident Dragon, is Debris and Iron Chain gives you the 10 you need to make Trident Dragons. 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay. So Iron Chain plus the plus the Debris, thanks to Limit Reverse, thanks to Call the Haunted, thanks to the Giant Trunade being able to reuse Limit Reverse and Call the Haunted, and Pot of Avarice, of course. The Debris plus Iron Chain, letting you reuse Iron Chain sometimes with Call as well, allowed him to make Trident Dragon. Should Trident Dragon be in this deck? Who knows, right? Honestly. Because now we have Darkened Dragon, we have things like that. I mean, technically, he still has one slot, but he was only on the one Drill Warrior. So that is one thing I do remember looking at, and I was like, oh, interesting. He only plays one Drill Warrior. That's not too uncommon as well, but usually if you're on 2 Quick Draw, you want to include 2 Drill Warrior just in case. But this was his list. This was, again, G Nation, and the deck was SJC Jersey. What do you rate this deck out of 10? Do you think it can still compete in today's version of Edison? And honestly, I'm going to say no, just for the simple fact of we learned that Quick Draw is just not that great, right? Like, when's the last time you remember Quick Draw actually winning? I don't even remember the last time Quick Draw topped my locals, let alone won. So, do I think this deck is still really great? Probably not. But the next deck is another build of Quick Draw Dandy, blah, blah, blah. But it's slightly different. And most of the comments on this one were his friends telling him to delete the deck. So this deck was a Soviet maiden frolicking in a meadow. Again, whatever. So he was on Flamvell Quick Draw. So that is what made his deck stand out. He's on 1 Debris, 2 quick draws, and the Flamvel engine with a rekindling. A lot of the comments were people telling him to delete the deck. Why'd you leak the sauce? Oh my God, this deck is so broken. It's so good. Again, as we know in hindsight, this did not win. A different version of Quick Draw Dandy Warrior won. And yeah, so at the time, though, people were freaking out, telling him to delete this. He was a member of United Ghostes, if you remember that team way back when. It was Sixy. That was his name. So Sixy from United Ghostes. Again, not going to dox anybody, but that is his username, and he was on United Ghostes. So this was his deck that he posted on Duelist Grounds, and I think he said he didn't care about posting it because in like 4 hours it was going to disappear anyway. It ended up having like 3-4 pages of comments. So the deck was out there for the world to see before Shonen Jump Championship Edison, and again, we have the power of hindsight, but do you think this deck can still compete, and what would you rate it? And also an interesting note is he included the Gravekeeper engine in his side deck. So he was siding into Spies and Descendants, and he did not play any Raikos at all. So there's no Raiko in this list, but he did include Dark End Dragon because he had access to one. So he's one of the few people who posted a list that included Dark End Dragon that we know he could use Dark End Dragon if he wanted to. All right. So this was his list. Rate it in the comments below. If you like these videos, I can go back, do more. We can talk about the different decks from that time period. There is one thing I forgot to mention about this deck here. So he took this deck to 2 regionals before SJC Edison. He finished 2nd place at both regionals on a 6-1 record. So obviously the deck was quite strong, especially at the time. I mean, it does look pretty standard with just a Flamvel Magician thrown in. So it does, have that going for it. It's not too different today. So just wanted to throw that out there because I forgot to mention it in the beginning. So again, if you like this type of video, we can go back and look at these old decks. I have the original Disaster Dragon build as well from Drygun, or I think it's what he called himself back then. Buddy from Florida who invented the deck, Hopeless, or was it Hopeless or Disaster Dragon? Yeah. So I have that original build as well. So I did that research. I did not put it in this video, so maybe we could do it next time. So thanks for coming, guys, checking out the video. Again, rate the decks below. What do you think of these? Do you think they have any promise? Could they be used today? Some of these probably, to be completely honest. And I think from this deck was my favorite. It is the most interesting of the ones I posted. And I think I'm going to tinker around with this deck myself. I need to pick up some Rinyons, though. I don't own this card. So there's one last thing I'd like to add for this video. I did this video not wanting to throw shade at anybody. Again, remember, we have the power of hindsight. That's why I personally did not give them a 0 to 10 scale. I do not want to badmouth anybody. And at the time, I will say a lot of people thought Cat Synchro and Blackwing were going to be the best decks. So many threads are just Cat Synchro and Blackwing, and it was just too much. And also Gladiator Beast. People thought Gladiator Beast were still going to be really good. People were citing Spirit of Rights or whatever it was, the trap that when you special a monster from deck. You can look it up. I'll probably pop up a picture right here. So it was really interesting looking back at those old decks. Again, not throwing shade at anybody. We have the power of hindsight, okay? But what do you think of these decks? Comment below. Like, follow, subscribe, tweet me, X me, look me up on Facebook. I'm all over the place posting things. And thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time. Maybe we'll do this format again, right?